we're looking at the tragic murders of three women in the UK, Carol Hunt and her daughters, Hannah and Louise. It's especially poignant because the main source we have is a news report about the sentencing of their killer, Kyle Clifford. But it's really John Hunt's words, the husband and father, that stick with you.
That's so true. Often in these cases, it's the voices of the families left behind that really reveal the true depth of the loss. And what's striking about John's testimony is that he chose to directly address Clifford, even though Clifford refused to be present in court.
Yeah, it's almost like he was determined to make Clifford hear him, even in absentia. And one of the things that really struck me was how John spoke about his family's kindness towards Clifford. They welcomed him into their home, shared meals with him, even included him in holiday celebrations.
It's a chilling detail because it really points to the manipulative nature of abusers. Clifford was able to present this facade of normalcy, seemingly blending into their lives while harboring such darkness beneath the surface. It makes you wonder about the psychology of deception, how someone can so convincingly portray themselves as one thing while planning such horrific acts.
And you see that deception even more clearly in the events leading up to the murders. Louise had ended her relationship with Clifford, citing some really valid reasons, including his racist views, how he talked down to her, and his infidelity. But even in breaking up, she was incredibly gracious, sending him a final text, thanking him for their time together.
And Clifford's response was just dripping with insincerity. He pretended to accept the breakup, even wished her well. But it was all a calculated act. He was already planning his revenge.
And that revenge was brutal. He waited for Louise to return home, attacked her, and then raped her when her sister Hannah arrived. He shot Louise in the back and then murdered Hannah as well.
Clifford's actions were not a sudden outburst, but a carefully orchestrated plan, born out of resentment and a desire to punish Louise for rejecting him.
John's description of spending hours with his family's bodies at the funeral home, unable to hold all their hands at the same time, is just devastating. Yet, even in his grief, he talks about channeling his inner Atticus Finch. I think many people know that name from To Kill a Mockingbird, but it's worth explaining why that reference is so significant here.
Absolutely. Atticus Finch, the lawyer in Harper Lee's novel, is a powerful symbol of moral courage, especially in the face of prejudice and injustice. He defends a wrongly accused black man in the deeply racist South, and he instills in his children a sense of empathy and a commitment to standing up for what's right, even when it's unpopular.
And that connection becomes even stronger when we remember that John also said Clifford had killed 3 beautiful mockingbirds. It's like he's directly linking his daughters to the symbolic innocence and beauty that mockingbirds represent, innocence that was brutally destroyed by Clifford's violence.
It's also a call for us to be more vigilant, to recognize the warning signs of abusive behavior.
It's clear that Clifford's actions have devastated John and his surviving daughter, Amy. Yet both of them spoke about finding a way to move forward to honor the memory of their loved ones while also seeking justice. And as we delve further into their testimonies, I'm particularly interested in how they choose to remember Carol, Hannah, and Louise, not just as victims, but as the vibrant individuals they were before this horrific crime.
And I think Amy's testimony is particularly powerful in this regard. She really doesn't hold back in her condemnation of Clifford's cowardice, calling him a monster, and rightfully so. But she also goes beyond that, painting a vivid picture of their everyday family life before this tragedy.
She talks about how her mom, Carol, was hysterically funny and fiercely protective, always ready with a witty remark.
And then there's Hannah, described as feisty and hilarious, eternally positive, someone who brought light into every room.
Right, and it's interesting how she describes Louise as having this gentle kindness, but also being strong and sassy. It reminds us that victims of violence are not one-dimensional. They are complex individuals with a range of traits, passions, and experiences that shape who they are.
Amy doesn't shy away from sharing those individual qualities, like how successful Louise's dog walking business was. It speaks to her entrepreneurial spirit, her love for animals, and the kind of independent life she was building. And it makes me think back to something John said in his statement. He spoke about his daughter's constant efforts to improve themselves to be better people. He seemed to be drawing a deliberate contrast between their choices and the path Clifford chose. That violence that we need to confront head-on in this case raises so many important questions about domestic abuse, warning signs, and the systemic failures that allow these tragedies to happen.
Absolutely, and I think it's crucial to acknowledge that domestic abuse isn't always physical. It can be emotional, psychological, verbal things like constant criticism, humiliation, gaslighting attempts to control or isolate a partner. These can be just as damaging, eroding a person's self-esteem and sense of self-worth over time.
We can't just focus on the physical violence. We need to recognize the subtle, insidious ways that abusers manipulate and control their victims. And that brings me back to Louise's reasons for breaking up with Clifford. She mentioned his racist views and his demeaning language towards her. Those are huge red flags.
We also need to know how to intervene, how to support victims, and how to challenge the societal norms that often perpetuate abuse.
This case is so multifaceted. We've got the legal aspects, the emotional impact on the family, the societal implications of domestic violence, and even these literary connections with To Kill a Mockingbird. It's a lot to process. But one thing I keep coming back to is John's determination to find meaning in the midst of unimaginable loss. And, as we've been discussing John's testimony, I've been reflecting on something he said that really struck me. He talked about how Clifford was able to deceive them, pretending to be someone he wasn't. It makes you wonder how we can spot those warning signs before it's too late.
That's such a crucial question, and unfortunately, there's no easy answer. Abusers are often skilled manipulators, adept at presenting a charming facade to the outside world while hiding their true nature. But there are some common patterns of behavior we can look out for.
Like the controlling behavior and disrespect that Louise described, it's so easy to dismiss those as personality quirks or relationship issues, but they can be early indicators of a much deeper problem. Yeah, and we need to move beyond simply reacting to these tragedies and focus on prevention. We need to challenge the societal norms that often condone or minimize abusive behavior.
Thank you for joining us on this difficult but essential deep dive. We hope that by exploring this tragedy together, we can contribute to a greater understanding of domestic violence and inspire positive change in our communities. Remember, you are not alone. If you or someone you know is experiencing abuse, please reach out for help. There are resources available, and there is always hope for a brighter tomorrow.